Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. My name's Josh, and today we're doing a new episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week for the week of November 28th. So, yeah, last week of November. If you're new to the Music Reviewer Podcast, welcome. My name's Josh. I'm just a guy that likes talking about music. Hopefully you do too. And Best and Worst Track of the Week is a weekly series where I go over all new entries into the Billboard Hot 100 and give each a letter grade and pick one that's the worst and pick ones that's the best as well. I also do album reviews frequently if you're wanting to check out those. The most recent one was a worth a listen episode, actually, where I go over something in the past that I thought was a interesting album or an album that I really dug, and I talk about it. So the last one was over White Lung's Paradise that came out in 2016. It's the most recent episode prior to this. So if you're interested in that, check out that album and check out also that worth the listen. Also, I believe the review before that was a album review of Nothing's latest album titled The Great Dismal. I don't think I mentioned that in any recent episodes. So yeah, check out The Great Dismal from the shoegaze outfit Nothing that I really think are developing past the shoegaze genre. So it's an interesting album. Go ahead and check out that review if you have some time. But anyways, yeah, best and worst track of the week this week. Somewhat of an interesting week. Not so much in like the content of the new entries. This week is pretty much dominated by Baby Album Bomb from the latest album from Future and Lil Uzi Vert. And the title of that project was Pluto by Baby Pluto. There's an X between the Pluto and Baby Pluto, so I'm just going to assume that's by Baby Pluto. Yeah, we got a number of tracks from that project, and I'll give you some thoughts from that here in a sec. Also, if you want to stick around, a track from Rhett, and also Lil Nas X. So, yeah, but I think mainly the more interesting side comes from the movement this week on the charts. A lot of lingering tracks dropped out, which is kind of seems like we're finally getting to that drastic shift that we're supposed to see around this time of the year. But starting from some highlights, Mood by 24kGoldn and Ian Dior still at number one. Not too surprising, actually, now at this point. They dropped a remix, too, at some point pretty recently that featured Justin Bieber and J Balvin, which are two massive artists, so that's to be expected. The big one that jumped up from 94 all the way to number 2 was Therefore I Am by Billie Eilish. Following some support, I think, from a music video and then also some critical acclaim and, press. So that's, that's a pretty big jump. I wouldn't be surprised if it drops down after this week because it seems like a lot of her stuff has been kind of just tanking after a debut or a large jump. But I would like to see this maybe get to number 1 if it can, but I don't know if that's possible. The top 10 for the most part stay pretty normal, nothing too interesting. Bottom part of the top 10. Just underneath the 10, though, we have a track by Chris Brown and Young Thug that went up to number 12 this week. Go Crazy. I've been tracking this one. I don't want to say tracking, that's too technical. I've been following this track. I think I didn't give it a review because the podcast started, or at least Best and Worst Track of the Week started a little bit after this track charting or debuting. But anyways, it's been slowly climbing. That's kind of been the story with a lot of tracks, a slow but steady climb. So yeah, actually, even though it's been steady climbing, it's actually peaked at number 9. But I wouldn't be surprised if this goes back into the top 10. But who knows? We're supposed to maybe get a Megan Thee Stallion album bomb next week, but it's interesting that track still has momentum. Chris Brown still hanging in there. Seems like whatever he does, he still has a career. But anyways, another slow but steady one, Be Like That by Kane Brown, Sway Lead, and Khalid, up to 19 this week. Yeah, that was, I think, one of the first worst tracks of the week. And it's slowly gaining, slowly but surely, from the one and only Kane Brown. And One of our first best tracks of the week, also Pretty Heart by Parker McCollum, slowly but steadily grinding up to 36 this week. I'm rooting for Parker McCollum on that track. I still dig that track. And interesting enough, I think One Beer by Hardy actually ended up dropping this week, which is just 1 week, but that one's been a slow but steady grinder too, but maybe that will finally lose some momentum. I think it's about time now that track dies. But anyways, another interesting thing, especially talking about last week, the oddball track I think was Whoopty by CJ. That one went up a few spots to 81, which is still quite low on the chart, but usually it has that momentum from the first week that I think it needs. We'll see. But I just was not a fan of that track. It really just screamed mediocrity to me. And then also an anomaly, the track by Mike Will Made It, Nicki Minaj and Young Boy Never Broke Again, What That Speed About? It's such a weird title. It dropped off the charts all the way from 35. That's terrible. And I've also been an avid, a proponent of giving Nicki Minaj, her credit, especially for being a pioneer in the 2010s for women in rap. And it just seems like nothing she's jumping on is really sticking these days. And I think the slight cancel of her is actually working. Some other notes real quick. Rags to Riches finally dropped out after 19 weeks on the charts by Rod Wave and ATR Sun. Still don't know to this day who ATR Sun is. I remember not being able to find anything on him when I reviewed that track. But yeah, congrats to Rod Wave on having a track that long. Also, the Roses remix by St. John finally dropped out after being such a huge summer banger. And being on the charts for 24 weeks. And then also, if you tuned in last week, all the King Von stuff dropped out. And Always Do by Kid Laroi, the worst track of the week, dropped out as well. So, nice to see that there. But anyways, let's get into the gist of this episode. Let's start with what came in at 100. The title of the track is Bought a Bad Bitch by Future and Lil Uzi Vert. On this track, there's a bit of an atmospheric beat, an instrumental, a lot of melodic material in the instrumental that has like this metallic texture to it. It's an interesting sort of sound palette, and it's not a bad hook on this track. Uzi, his verse gets interesting as it progresses. I don't think Future's verse is nearly as captivating, and I feel like that's the theme of this project. And on just about every track, I think Lil Uzi Vert kind of just schools Future, or at least gives us a better performance. But anyways, Bought a Bad Bitch. It's a fine track. Could have done without Future's verse, to be honest. I give it a B. Next one, Just by Future. I don't know why Lil Uzi Vert's not credited here. He's not on the track, though. Coming in at 97, Rockstar Chains. Thought this one was pretty middle of the road. Not too bad, though. I like the staccato and chirpy keyboard sample thing and the beat going on. There's a somber mood to it overall, which I think is pretty, I guess, yeah, it's a nice dynamic contrast in comparison to a lot of the other stuff on this project. There's also a bit of like a fuck you, I'm a rock star sort of lyrical theme going on. But also, interestingly enough, there's like some sort of Nav aesthetic on here. Like Future's taking a lot of influence from like Nav's sort of approach to songwriting. And then the chorus and hook on this track is somewhat catchy and decent. It's somewhat catchy and decent as well. I give it a B. Next track came from Lil Uzi Vert and Future, coming in at 87, Plastic. Thought this one was pretty okay as well. I like the brass and string utilization on this beat. It's refreshing to hear those sort of textures on a trap beat. I like the way they're used as well. They kind of crescendo on some bits. Gives the track some nice dynamics. But I don't really like the minimalist hook and the utilization of it, and how Future and Lil Uzi Vert just feel so uninterested and it's very static on how they play off each other on most of this track. And then also, I think the track does improve when we get Uzi's standalone verse. I think he automatically makes the track a little bit more interesting and less static when it's just him. He honestly kind of saves the track, so I give this track a B. Next, this track seems to be a reoccurring theme with our one-off country track coming in. So this track came in at 86. What's Your Country Song by Thomas Rhett. Honestly, I thought this was pretty generic, but also the execution of the track kind of saved it. There's a rich and lush country instrumentation that automatically greets you, and a bright acoustic guitar riff in the intro that kind of just hits you too. But it's just a very generic song idea that it kind of just goes off of like this cliche, let's make a country song about country songs song. And you know, I just been seeing that theme, especially with like a lot of like bro country artists doing that sort of ode to the classics, but it's kind of getting played out, I think. And this track definitely is not going to be the worst thing on country radio right now, as long as Florida Georgia Line are doing their thing, and I don't know who else to name, but there's some nice vocal moments towards the end. I don't know if there's a uncredited vocalist, but there's a nice duet with some good vocal harmonizations towards the end that goes well with Thomas Rhett, and I give it a B. Next track came in at 68, Sleeping on the Floor by Future and Lil Uzi Vert. I dig the swift and agile flow on this track. I think it gives the track some much needed energy in comparison like to the rest of the project. And there's like this distorted and dirty low end on this track that really just doesn't complement everything else, I think. And this track, in my opinion, the problem is it just tries way too hard to be a banger. When it's really not a banger. They could have just went in another direction. I think it would have served the song much better. There's some luxury rap aesthetics here going on too. And again, when Lil Uzi Vert comes in, he brings much more flavor and interest to the track in comparison to Future. I gave this track a C. Next track is by Future and Lil Uzi Vert, coming in at $67 million play. This track has a bit of a sultry flavor to it. Maybe like some slight jazz or low key R&B, like slow jams sort of influence here. There's a distorted piano sample though that sounds gritty, and it's just, in my opinion, just doesn't sound very good in the context of the track. Uzi's presence and flow is great on here, as it seems to be a recurring theme on this project. The track does have some interesting moments, and Uzi's hook on here is nice as well, but I give this track a B. Next track, is off the same project by Future and Lil Uzi Vert, coming at 64, Marnie on Me. This track definitely has a nice bounce to it, a decent groove. The track definitely has some more grit in comparison to other things on this project, and it also features this gangbang aesthetic. There's also like this dark and quirky overall mood to it, and the track features this watery, melodic, electronic elements that make the track a little bit more interesting. The only issue with this track, it just seems very minimalist, underdeveloped. It almost sounds like a demo. Like it should not have made a project or a major project like this. They should have kept on working on it, in my opinion. I give it a C+ though. Next track is going to be a first on this podcast, and there's a good reason for it. This track came in at 57, titled Iris by Phoebe Bridgers and Maggie Rodgers. And yes, that Phoebe Bridgers, the one that will probably never be on the Hot 100 again, because this is a cover of the classic track by the Goo Goo Dolls from the 90s or early 2000s titled Iris. If you've ever listened to the radio at all growing up, or still to this day, if you listen to a variety radio station, you're probably going to hear Iris on that playlist. And the reason why I can't really incorporate this into the best orange track of the week is for a couple reasons. For one, I listened to this track once, and since then it's been taken down, possibly due to copyright. But I think it's mainly because this track was meant to be like a sort of fundraiser, special release because of Biden winning the election. Phoebe bet her fans if Trump loses, she'll release a cover of Iris, and I think she might have done that jokingly, but it ended up happening, and this track came out on Bandcamp. And since then, I can't find it anywhere. You would have had to download it or listen to it when it was on the streaming platforms. It's been since taken down. And since this is a cover and it's something that's going to obviously drop out next week, it's not going to stick around. And I will say the track was nice from my memory. Some really great vocal harmonies and performance by Bridgers and Rodgers. A nice take on the cover, of a folky take, and they made it their own. I'll just give it an honorable mention. But anyways, I don't really know what else to do, because it's not like you guys can listen to it after listening to me talk about it. So I just kind of had to put that in there. But yeah, not a bad track from Phoebe Bridgers and Maggie Rodgers. Next track was Stripes Like Burberry by Future and Lil Uzi Vert, coming in at 46. This track is a little bit more of an interesting one. It kind of borrows this poppy style, more attributed to like a Lil Skies or Landon Cube, like that sort of trap or emo rap, that sort of aesthetic. The track also features an atmospheric sound, kind of like this electronic, bouncy bass line on the track that I dig. And I like Future in this context, actually. He croons on here, which in my opinion, when he's crooning, it's honestly better than his rapping, because his rapping, in my opinion, is just very static and it sounds uninterested. Yeah, this is one of the better developed tracks, too. I give it a B. Next track is not from Future and Lil Uzi Vert. This one's Holiday by Lil Nas X, coming in at 37. And before we actually get into this track, this track is really making me suspicious or skeptical of Lil Nas X, what he is actually doing with his career. Not to say he needs to go in any particular direction, but he's really starting to feel like a novelty artist. It seems like he might know that the success from Old Town Road was a sort of, lottery, 1 in a million sort of thing. And it seems like with us being in the holiday season and he's releasing a track called Holiday, he's really trying to make music more for a cultural sense where it relates to pop culture or just some sort of theme. Like Old Town Road was country and western, a western sort of theme, and this is sort of a jingly holiday, but it's still a pretty decent track. I just don't really see how you keep this up, making tracks like this with this novelty feel. But anyways, the track, on the instrumental, there's a bouncy bass line that I think gives the track a nice groove. Some electronic elements that are pretty decent. It's a well-written track. It's very poppy, catchy. It's probably the most hookiest thing I've heard of this week. He goes a little meta about his career. He talks about coming up and I guess criticism maybe. It's straightforward. Nowhere near as anthemic as Old Town Road, but then again, he's never going to write Old Town Road again. So it's interesting it's an interesting topic to see where Lil Nas X ends up in terms of his music career. But I give the track a B. Next track was coming in at 31, our highest debuting, I believe, this week. Drinking and Smoking by Future and Lil Uzi Vert. This one was kind of just predictable, a little less than average from what I got on this project. Some blatant modern trap aesthetics being utilized here with the dreaded clean guitar line that supports the track. Kind of reminds me of the clean guitar in here, though. Kind of reminds me of Baby Bash or something like that, with a R&B flavor. Guitar utilization. There's a little bit of a conceited nature here from Future, but I'm not surprised. He does that on a lot of tracks too. At this point, the material is just falling flat, though, about this time when I get to this track, and it's just very predictable. Not much to really point out. I give it a B-. So we are at that point in time where I give you the worst track of the week, and then I will give you the best track of the week. I always start on the worst so we can end on a positive note. And honestly, it was going to be by default that the Bro Understand best track of the week were going to come from the Pluto, Baby Pluto project. And the worst track of the week, That's It, titled That's It by Future and Lil Uzi Vert, really wasn't terrible. I didn't really think anything that I heard off this project was terrible, but it's certainly not memorable. And I think that's what this track suffers from as well. It sounds formulaic. There's not really a climatic moment that the track builds up to. I felt like most of the track was uninteresting. There's some typical trap aesthetics here, a clean guitar instrumental, as expected. And again, like the ongoing theme, Lil Uzi Vert sounds way more interesting and captivating than Future does on this track. There's some dirty sub-bass hits that happen on the track that are super predictable. There are some nice dry percussive elements in the track that I thought provided a nice color. But that's really all I could say that was memorable. So yeah, That's It got worst track of the week. But on a 180 on this project, Real Baby Pluto by Lil Uzi Vert and Future got best track of the week. And I like this track. I really wish they would have been more consistent on this project, because this track featured a lot of interesting things. There's a real colorful flavor with lots of textures here all throughout the track. The opening groove is nice and incorporates like a syncopated groove and feel to it. There's like this harpsichord like keyboard riff that structures the track, that gives the track a interesting dynamic, and Uzi sounds great over the speed. And then when you incorporate everything else with like this spooky organ embellishments that are putting some touches on the track, it really makes for a captivating experience. The main chorus section is memorable as well. It's catchy. I feel like they could have done that a lot better on several of these tracks. There's a fun triplet flow that's a nice touch here, and Future isn't half bad on here either on this track. I felt like he at least held up his own. It wasn't like Lil Uzi Vert was saving the track on here. So I gave Real Baby Pluto best track of the week. And yeah, if you stuck with me this long, thanks for listening to Best and Worst Track of the Week this week. Hopefully you tune in next week or listen to more of the Music Reviewer podcasts. I'm available on pretty much all streaming platforms that host podcasts. So wherever you decide to listen, please subscribe if you're into the podcast. I'm also on YouTube. If you just type in the Music Reviewer, there's a channel where I upload all episodes. So like and subscribe there. If you want to listen to YouTube or leave some feedback, good or bad too. Anyways, take care of yourselves. I'll see y'all later. And happy Thanksgiving.